AM 740.
Welcome to the Audio Imaginarium. Come on in, weary traveler. Hang your cloak on a peg, grab a stool, and come gather around the fire. There are stories to be told, and you are among friends. If you're new to the program, welcome, and you've picked the perfect night to join us. Rosemary Ellen Guiley is an extraordinary paranormal researcher and the author of over 70 books, and she joins us in the second hour for a conspiracy show tradition. Once a month, she drops by and we kick around a few wonderfully strange stories in the news. We call it the Paranormal News Roundup. This hour, in my 20-plus years behind a microphone, I've interviewed and met countless alleged alien abductees and UFO ET experiencers. But Eric Mitchell is, to date, the most credible such person I've met, and he has one of the most compelling stories. Eric has been counseling abductees of alien encounters for the last 5 years, since having his own encounter and facing the harsh reality of this phenomena and its effects on one's life. He's dedicated his time to helping others who have had the misfortune of experiencing this phenomenon firsthand. Along with educating the public and ufologists on this subject, Eric is a highly sought-after speaker and lecturer on the topics of UFOs at conferences and on radio, TV, and documentary films. Eric Mitchell, welcome to The Conspiracy Show. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on.
We should point out that you're down in Arkansas. Now, you grew up in a small town. You've described that as the Bible Belt. Just before we get into your case, just tell me about life in small town Arkansas growing up.
Well, it's, everybody knows everybody. If something significant happens in your life, it travels around pretty fast. Very, very nice, kind, genuine people. If you go to the grocery store and you have a little chit chat with the lady behind the counter, she genuinely wants to know how your day is. It's not a programmed response or a mechanical reactive behavior. It's genuine people. What I went through, it made it very difficult to kind of stay around per se.
And you were a debunker on this subject for years, right? I mean, were you a regular churchgoer, and I mean, were you raised to, I guess, not believe in UFOs, aliens?
Well, of course, I think through social conditioning, especially here in America, that we're all raised not to believe in this kind of thing. I wasn't really actively a debunker. I wouldn't go after people for talking about that kind of thing, but I would shy away from them. Like, wow, this guy's nuts. He's talking about UFOs. I would definitely shy away from that kind of thing. I'd like to think that I was very simple Southern man, very practical, and slow, to be honest with you. I didn't really have a whole lot of intelligence, and this whole situation really changed my way of thinking 100%.
But for you, that old expression, seeing is believing, but for you, in the beginning, seeing wasn't believing, correct?
That is correct. That is correct. I couldn't, I'm a student of psychology, and when you come across something that's not supposed to be real, naturally you go that direction. And for me, I wanted to believe that I was suffering too much stress in my life. Maybe I was having some sort of delusion. And it got really bad. It got to the point where I was daydreaming that I can go to a psychologist, get on medication. 6 months later, all this would be gone. Meanwhile, at the time, I'm having witnesses all over my neighborhood point these objects out. They were really scared. I had pictures and videos on my phone, very up close, very good pictures. And at the same time, I'm still telling myself, this isn't real. Everyone just noticed that I lost my mind, and they were agreeing with me just to be nice. I was trying to paint that. And if I ever was delusional in my entire life, that would have been that time, because I could not accept it at all. It just wouldn't be a part of my reality. So
give us a time frame, and then we'll go through this kind of chronologically. When did the sightings? It was I guess this orange spherical object floating around your place. When did that start?
It was I believe it was July 28th of 2013. I had woken up and I was standing outside of my apartment. I had no idea how I got there. And I kind of slowly woke up. I didn't wake up and just kind of jolt. I slowly woke up with this confusion, like, what the hell am I doing outside? I could feel my eyebrows just pushing together in confusion. And I'm looking at the dead end of the road. It's a very, very small street, very short dead end. And here this thing is. And my first thought is that an exploded transformer? But the more I became conscious, the more I was just absolutely confused. I'm looking at this bright light. It's maybe 35, 40 feet in diameter. And it looks like a miniature sun. And what bothered me the most is it didn't really illuminate light. It was very bright, but the street, the apartments, the trees, everything around this thing was not illuminated, but it was extremely bright. So it really bothered my thinking.
And what time of day was that again?
It was around 4 a.m. I
4
remember
a.m.,
going inside, and it was about 4:18 when I walked inside and turned on the television. I thought maybe there was some strange weather phenomena. I was kind of desperate at the time to try to figure out what the heck was going on. But I kept the door open all morning so I can kind of lean over on my couch and look out. And as soon as the doubt would come back into my mind, I would lean over and look and go, what the hell is that thing? What could it possibly, it didn't bob, it didn't weave, it just kind of marbled like water. Or if you were looking directly at the sun, it had that wavy motion to the exterior. So I figured by 6 a.m. or so, the sunlight would be out, and I'd be able to laugh at myself and go, look, optical illusion. And, the world would start spinning my way again. But by the time the sun came up, I was getting the kids up and getting coffee and poked my head out as soon as the light came out, and there was nothing there. So I walked outside. I looked around to kind of give myself an idea of what this optical illusion, and I couldn't really explain it away. So, that day, I'm normally the guy with charisma at work and getting everybody going, but that day I was just really quiet, kept to myself, and really confused about what it was.
And you mentioned you're getting your kids breakfast. Did you discuss it with their mother, or did you just say nothing to no one?
Well, no, I was a single father at the time, and I really didn't want to say anything to the kids or anything like that. When you see something you can't explain, the last thing that you do is try to tell someone about it. At least in my situation, because, if you see something that's not supposed to be real, how do you even begin having that conversation? And that's what I find in my work is that people internalize this so much that it literally just destroys them from the inside out. And it just takes one person to listen to and say, look, you're not crazy. I've witnessed these things too. And, immediately their life gets a lot better. But that's what I did. I just internalized it, put it in the confusion folder in my mind, and tried to go on and have a normal day.
But obviously that wasn't the end of it. It kept coming back. And at some point, though, you had neighbors who saw it, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think there were 19 witnesses that literally lived on the street. But there was quite a few more because people would talk at the grocery stores, they'd talk at church, and they'd get curious about what's happening. They'd hear about this kind of thing, so they would drive up at night, and it became quite a bit of a fiasco because people were throwing beer cans down, cigarette butts. There'd be 10, 20, 30 people outside of my apartment after dark just to see what all the fuss is about. And so these people witnessed it too, went to other people, and word got around really fast. And because I live in the Bible Belt, they were saying that I was calling down the devil, that I was in league with the devil somehow or something like that. So things got pretty negative, for me in the town that I live in. Why did
they focus the attention on you? Just because it appeared outside your apartment? You had neighbors. Why you?
Well, it was obvious to everyone in the neighborhood that this thing was interested in me. If I'd walk away from the crowd, it would literally go across the street and be in front of me. So, and it really wouldn't show up until I came right outside. You know, people would knock on my glass, they would knock on my door. These are people I've never even met. You know, they just want to see the object, and I would come out and the object would show up. So it really frightened a lot of people, including myself. I was physically affected by this thing. And affected in so many ways. I don't think we have enough time on the show to really get into all of that, but this object did hover above me. I was unaware of it. I was standing on my, I was standing on my own shoelace at the time, and I kind of stepped back and untied my shoe. I'm sure everybody's done it once in their life. And I felt this vibration on the top of my head. And I didn't know what it was. I hurried up, finished tying my shoe, and all of a sudden it was like someone turned up the volume on this thing. It felt like a extremely unexplainable vibration and frequency, kind of like if you're standing in front of a rock speaker during a conference or something like that. You know, you're going to feel the vibration come through, but this is maybe times a million. I went straight to the ground face first. I felt it mainly in my head. The only real thought I can push through my mind was, oh my God, I'm being killed. You know, it was that harsh. I did throw up, but the only reason I knew that is because my throat was open for a long period of time. And as soon as I could push myself off the ground and look up at the object, it flashed twice and darted away as fast as a bullet. No sound, no indication or anything. It was just jaw-dropping that there's no sonic boom. There's no anything like that, but it just took off. So I kind of laid there.
And you were bleeding, right? You were bleeding out of your nose and your ears?
Yes, my left ear and both nostrils and my nose. I actually, I literally crawled into the apartment, got into the bathroom floor, and I was so hot, my skin was like sunburned. I felt like I had third-degree burns on my brain. Literally, it was just on fire. And, we don't have nerve endings on our brain to literally feel something like that, so I'm still confused about that. But I just laid on that cold floor and passed out. I did yell to my kids, call 911, but I think they were already sleeping.
As I'm hearing this, particularly, the witnesses that saw this orange sphere floating above your neighborhood, the image that came into my mind was the Fatima apparition of 1917. Are you familiar with that case?
I don't think so.
These Portuguese children, very poor Portuguese children in Fatima, Portugal, village during the First World War, saw what they believed was the apparition of the Virgin Mary, and she visited with them and revealed all of these, prophecies and so forth. And then at some point there were thousands of people who came because it was a recurring episode, and they saw this light in the sky. It was sort of dancing in the sky and things. And this was seen by thousands of people. And so I'm the fact that you had all of these witnesses, I'm surprised it didn't garner the kind of media attention that, the Fatima apparition is, particularly among observant Catholics, is a huge event. And yet your event, I'm guessing, didn't receive that kind of media attention.
Well, it actually did. I got a call from a CNN reporter, several different news outlets, all kinds of things. It did get out. But I was in a position where the only way I could actually explain it is when I went through my divorce. I had constant anxiety. What's going to happen to the kids? What's going to happen to my home? Is my bank account going to get drawn in? So I was in that state of constant fear and worry and confusion. I was definitely not in a position to go sit down in front of CNN and tell them what happened. Today, yeah, I could do that. But back then, my worldview was absolutely 100% being destroyed. Everything that I believed in, everything that I was changing. And it's, I was suffering from what you would call maybe savant syndrome, where you have a very low IQ, and the next thing you know, it's 150, and you don't know what to do with that. So I was going through a lot of struggles with these things, and there was no way in the world I was going to be that crazy UFO guy that everybody laughs at, for a split second on television. I'd like to think of myself a little more aware than that. You know what I mean? It's just, I just didn't want to be in that situation, especially being a single father, 4 kids, and you don't want DHS banging on your door going, hey, you're nuts, I'm going to take your children away now. So there's so many factors that you can put into that. But, now that the kids are all off to college, I can talk about these things, especially not just for myself, because I speak to at least one new person every day that has these experiences, maybe not 100% the same, but very, very similar. And it just keeps coming out over and over and over again. And it's just jaw-dropping to hear from 125 different countries all over the world with people telling you, yes, I've seen this thing. Oh, my God, I'm not crazy. So it really helps them out. They don't have a voice. I don't think most of them ever will until this taboo really lifts, from our society and becomes something a little more understanding about this. The CIA, they're completely involved with studying this kind of thing. Yet us people think, it's all taboo and it's all quote unquote crazy.
When did you notice the birds flying into your building and killing themselves?
Oh, that was just before the first UFO incident. I actually recently spoken with a man about, I think, 20 minutes from here, and he's been trying to find me. He tracked me down. He said, that same night, those birds, I saw an object floating over the trees, and it was the same as I described, and these birds are just falling down dead right there in his driveway. And he thought he was alone for the longest time was seeing this object, but he wasn't, and we've been talking quite a bit about it.
And at some point, because of the birds, I guess, you had the Centers for Disease Control, the CDC, came to your place knocking on your door. What were they looking for?
Well, the first thing I asked them, because they were in full gear, am I in danger? Are my kids in danger? Because, I was laying on the couch. I was trying to get a nap. Single parents never get naps, so this was like a great thing for me. And I hear just rocks or baseball or something just hitting the side of the building. So I'm thinking, kids are playing baseball or something like that outside. But once it got so loud and so frequent, I decided I was going to go out and scold some children for being so loud and damaging to my apartment. And, well, that wasn't the case at all. It was these black birds. They were literally falling from the sky and landing into the end of my apartment. The CDC asked me if I had any strange electrical things in the house, and I told them, no, I have a refrigerator, television, just normal stuff, I don't have any strange electrical anything, and I asked them if I was going to get some kind of, information about what was going on, because, there could be some kind of flu, there could be, disease or something like that. And I've never heard back from them. As a matter of fact, I saw it a couple of nights later. It was on national news that all these birds were falling out of the sky, and there was no explanation other than fireworks is the only thing they can come up with.
You mentioned your IQ went from 110 to 150. So you had yourself tested, right? What sort of came into your mind that you realized I need to get this tested because I'm not the old me anymore?
Well, I was really lucky. I was looking for someone in the very beginning that knew about this. I didn't care if it was paranormal, explainable. I didn't care. I just wanted to talk to someone that knew about this kind of thing and literally just open my mouth and say these things so I can get them off my chest. They were boiling inside. I needed to erupt. I needed to speak with someone. And I found a man that was with MUFON for the longest time. He's been studying this thing on his own for over 40 years, you know. So I got on the phone with him, and the first 2 minutes, I'm rolling my eyes going, this guy's crazy. You know, he's talking about UFOs and aliens and all this stuff. And but I decided I was going to stay on the phone and listen to everything the man had to say. So I was lucky to have him, because in the beginning he started a case. He started collecting evidence, witness statements, and all that stuff. So it was just really good to you know, I was so lucky to run into him at that time.
But was there a sort of an aha moment for you when you said, I think I'm a lot smarter than I used to be? What's going on here?
Well, he noticed the change, you know. I noticed the change as well, but he noticed it. He said, you know, you're talking faster. You know, what's going on with this? And during these investigations, you want to do psychological analysis every 3 months. If you notice anything at all, you need to follow it, you know, and document it. And for me, it was almost instantaneous, but not at the same time. I would notice my thoughts thinking. For a small example, I went to a pep rally to see my son, you know, play his horn, have a good time, root for our team. I've done it for years, you know, and I walk up to the school, and this school I've known for years, and it's called Cutter Morning Star. People can Google it. It's in Hot Springs, Arkansas. I went, Morning Star, you know. So everything that I had initially looked at throughout my life had changed in front of my eyes. So I'm walking around seeing
Eric,
things.
pardon the interruption. I'm going to take it.
Sure.
This will be a bit of a cliffhanger. We'll come back and we'll pick up on this story. Eric Mitchell, experiencer, abductee. Back with more of The Conspiracy Show in a moment. Stay with us.
You're listening to The Conspiracy Show with Richard Sarrett from Zoomer Radio.
Eric Mitchell stays with us. Just a reminder, coming up in the second hour, Rosemary Ellen Guiley with our Paranormal News Roundup. And she'll also take us on a little paranormal road trip across America and highlight some of the top places. So, Eric, you were talking about this aha moment when you realized that you had received sort of a significant upgrade, shall we say. You went to a pep rally at your son's public school, and the name of the school, Morning Star, something clicked.
Yes. I never thought about that before, but I went into the pep rally, and I'm looking at kids holding flags with goats on them. I'm looking at young ladies with painted faces, short skirts, throwing their legs in the air in front of the crowd. I'm looking at children, chanting, fight, 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 win, 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 a practice of dislike or hatred toward a town because of a ball game. And, I started thinking about divide and conquer, and I started thinking about the thought process of one town versus another and what we teach our children. And, I started thinking about different counties, different towns. Accents divide us, religion divides us, and if you look at the United States, it's not the United States, it is the divided states, because look at all those lines and different names. So I just kind of went through all of that in my mind so fast, and I went, wow, what the hell? I'm just a simple redneck, and here I am just having all these thoughts and emotions and feelings, and that, too, was really, really difficult to handle. I mean, it got to the point where I had to keep my mind busy. I had to keep reading. I got into mathematics and botany, and this was not me. This was not how I normally am, get up, go to work, take care of the kids, do my routine, because routine is safe for a single parent. And here I am divulging. The only way I can explain it with addiction is cigarettes, because I smoke. And so if I want one really bad, I know that feeling, and I was just craving so much information. And to this day, I literally haven't read one book on the UFO subject, and I think that's kept me safe for a lot of reasons. But yeah, I just couldn't get enough information, and now I think I'm definitely full of useless information, but I had to learn. I just had to keep cramming. It was just an impulse to keep going, and it was mind-wrecking. It was very, very, very difficult to per se go through that type of transition so quickly.
But meanwhile, I mean, these experiences are still happening. Tell me about the actual abduction.
Well, I actually don't have memory of abduction. I do have slight bits and pieces, flashes in the mind of seeing different lights with my eyes barely perched open. But what I can tell you is I was in extreme denial. I was talking to my investigator. He said, "You're not going to like this, but I believe you have been abducted." And I couldn't accept that. What rational mind can say, a UFO came over my house, took me and my children and did experiments? I mean, that's just, you can't digest that right away. And it's taken me years to digest it as well. But what I couldn't overlook was the marks. I believe the first time is when I woke up and here I am on my couch. I have a 380 under my pillow because if anything was going to come through that front door, I'm going to shoot it. I was at that point. I was scared. I was confused. And he's pouring cereal, and I look up at him, and he's got this mark cut out of his forehead. And it was a large piece of skin. It was pretty good sized. So I got up and I looked at it. I rushed him into the bathroom, and I'm putting peroxide on it and cold water, and I'm asking him, "How did you hit your head? What happened to you?" And he said, "I don't know, Dad. I just woke up and it's here." And he said, "Dad, look at your head." And he looks up in the mirror at me and points, and I looked up at my head, and I had a gash in the same spot of my forehead. So I told my son, I said, "Hold on to the counter. Don't move." And I went into his sister's room, pulled over the blanket, and there it was on her head as well, the same exact spot. Now, am I to believe that all three of us sleptwalked, fell into an object of the same shape and size, with different weight distributions? All of us had the same depth and everything like that, all in one night. Well, that right there is an insane thought. There was about 3 days later, I woke up to my daughter screaming. I ran into her room as fast as I could, and she had her mouth just wide open, trying to scream. And I just ran up to her. I'm shaking her. "What's wrong? What's wrong?" And she pulls the blanket off of her shoulder, and from her shoulder cuff to her elbow were literally hundreds of scoops. And I'm not talking bug bites. These things were deep enough to put a drop of water at least in each one of them. And I stopped counting on one arm at 174 on one arm. That's how ate up her arm was.
Oh, dear.
But as I'm freaking out, she's got her mouth open. She's trying to say something to me, but she points at my arm, and I look down, and I have the same thing. So, I've known their pediatrician for 15 years. We've been golfing. He's a great guy. And he looks at her and says, "Good Lord, little girl, what in the world is eating you?" And he looks at me and he says, "Eric, these lesions are deep enough to be bleeding or at least pussing." He said, "The skin is so dehydrated that they're not doing either." He said, "I've got to have some kind of explanation." He said, "Eric, if I haven't known you as long as I've known you, I'd have to report this." And I said, "What do you mean report this?" And he said, "Well, to DHS, for harming your children or having your children in harm's way." And I told him, I said, "Look, it's got to be some kind of bug bite or something, I don't know." And he said, "Yeah, but that wouldn't explain the dehydration and things of that nature." So it was a terrible, terrible time to really be in a cognitive dissonance of what's going on, what's causing these things. And there were several different ones. I had woken up one morning, jumped in the shower, and as soon as the water hit my stomach, I felt a severe burning sensation. And I looked down, and from nipple to navel, a very long, what looks like a laser incision. And I've had a couple of doctors tell me that's exactly what a laser incision looks like. I have no idea where it came from, but it's still there to this day, just a big, long scar. So, in the beginning, it was impossible to believe, but at the same time, where are these marks coming from? I'm not the type to jump out of bed and look at a tiny little nick on me and say, "Oh, that must be, aliens." It's got to be something very substantial for me to even go that route. But I had to start looking into it.
And did your children have any memory? Do they now have any memory of these experiences? Yes,
they do. They do, more than I do. they remember being on the craft. They remember me just being on a table and being incoherent. You know, they would say "Dad" or something like that, and I just wouldn't respond. At one point, my daughter remembers holding one of their hands and walking down a hallway and going into a room and trying this machine. And when she tried this machine, it seemed to put her directly into a meditative state of the way she described it, she said she felt like she was everything all at once. And she had a lot of trouble explaining that to me. But they have a lot more memory of abduction than I do. You know, most of my memory is right there in the front yard, you know, with this object.
In the next, we're coming up on a break here, but just in the few minutes before we break, just let's start this conversation about the frequencies
Sure.
that were used, I guess, to communicate with you, and then we'll discuss how you sort of have this ability, or your brain has this ability to create sound. When did this all begin?
Sure. That happened when I got knocked down by the object. I usually don't talk about it too much, but I guess I don't mind. When this object knocked me down, I did feel it predominantly in my brain. Like I said before, we don't have nerve endings in our brain, but of course we can definitely have a headache once in a while. The next morning when I woke up covered in blood, covered in vomit. I was fully clothed. I kicked off my shoes and I got directly into the shower and just laid there, fully clothed, until the hot water ran out. I dried up, you know, I got on fresh clothes, and I went in to get something to drink because I was insanely thirsty. I mean, I grabbed the cranberry juice and I didn't care. I was just spilling it down my shirt, just trying to get enough liquids into my body. And I started to walk from the kitchen into the living room, and I felt that slight rumble on the top of my head. So I literally grabbed the counter and braced. I froze. You know, you ever see a goat that gets scared? They just freeze and they fall over. I mean, that's the kind of terror that I was in at the moment. And as soon as I would kind of relax, that frequency and the vibration would just kind of go away. So about 5 times into it that morning, I kind of thought to myself, is this me? You know, am I doing this? So I paid attention to that feeling. It felt like the center of my brain, like there's a little muscle in there.
Eric, I'm going to jump in here. We're going
Sure.
to head into a break, and we'll pick up on this on the other side. Eric
Sure.
Mitchell, with a remarkable, harrowing, almost horrifying abduction experience. Back with more of The Conspiracy Show. My name is Richard Serrett. Don't go away. So, Eric, you were talking about the sensation in the top of your head, and it was happening over and over and over again. You want to pick up from where we left off there?
Well, sure. I kind of paid attention to where it was. You know, it felt like a muscle. You could move your finger, you could move your toes, and I felt something in the center of my brain. So it's hard to explain, but I accessed it. Or allowed it. It's really difficult to articulate, but as soon as I did that, it went off, and I mean went off bad. And I jumped up off the couch, and I'm pacing back and forth, and I'm going, oh my God, I'm insane. You know, I probably have schizophrenia, or I have, you know, I keep wanting to lean toward that, especially in the beginning when all this was happening. But, you know, maybe I had a brain tumor. So I just totally freaked out. And I wasn't in a good position to experience that in the first place because I'd gone through so much already. So I got a hold of my investigator and I said, look, you're not going to believe this. I don't even want to tell you, but this is what's going on. And he said, let me send someone down there immediately and let's check it out. So he sent one of his investigators out. Nice lady. She came out. She witnessed the high strangeness, the lights flickering, the television turning on and off. She went through 4 cameras trying to film me on tape. I think she got 19 witnesses that day, but she, you know, poor thing, you know, she would plug in a camera, aim it, and it would just drain. So she went through 4 cameras. The 4th one, she just kept plugged into the wall so she can actually do the interviews. Well, she had told me, she said, we're going to be on camera, and you can show me this vibration and frequency thing that you're talking about. And kind of, she looked really skeptical. You know, looking back, I don't blame her. I would be skeptical too. But I was shy about it, and I immediately got upset with her, thinking, you know, it doesn't believe me, you know. So I really got to push that out and show her. So I sat in a chair in front of mine, in front of the camera, and I leaned forward, and I put my forehead to her forehead, and I pushed it out as hard as I could. And she immediately fell out of the chair. I had to catch her, and her face swelled up and her eyes swelled shut and everything like that. So she had a lot to report to my investigator about it. You know, she said this is a real thing. It's definitely not tinnitus or schizophrenia or anything like that, which we've gone through a lot of studying about it, you know, trying to figure out
right. I mean, what you're describing is not physiologically possible.
Right. That's what my doctor said. He did his thesis on the human brain in school, and he said there's nothing in the human brain that can create sound. Now, I have a friend of mine, well, he's now a friend because of our dealings, but he worked for MIT for quite a while, and he postulates that I'm somehow able to push the subtle energy, the firing between neurons, that it looks like electricity, but it's not. But he postulates that I'm able to somehow access all of it at once and push it to make sound and vibration.
Is it measurable?
Well, I can set off EMP meters and stuff like that at will.
Do you remember that renowned debunker, the amazing Randy? He used to be a magician, and then he worked for one of these. Well, he's got an organization. He debunks this kind of stuff, and he offered up a prize of $1 million for anyone who could prove some sort of paranormal, supernatural phenomena. I mean, what you're describing, I think there's a check with your name on it for $1 million.
Well, I mean, if he would like to have coffee sometime, I'd love to show him. You know, this is not something that I can only do on the second Tuesday of every month. You know, this is something that, is with me all the time. I mean, I just entertain myself. I put in earphones and add to the music. Now, what's something very interesting that I've come across recently is Kit Green from the CIA. He works in Princeton University. He deals with DNA a lot. He's been scanning experiencers like myself, and he's been doing MRIs and stuff like that, and he got a hold of, I believe, who was that? Grant Cameron that's been talking to him.
Oh, yes, Canadian. I know Grant, yes.
Grant, great guy, great researcher. I mean, if you want to follow the truth, he's always nipping the heels of it. So I talked to Grant recently, and Grant told me, he said, yeah, some of these guys are pushing out, not at will, okay, these are brain scans, of 25 hertz, 45 hertz, 50 hertz. And then he wanted to surprise me. And he said, Eric, some of these monks that they're scanning that meditate all the time, they're actually pulling out 100 hertz from their brain. And I kind of chuckled, and I went, oh, no, because last time I was sent to Nashville, now 100 hertz is below human hearing. You're not going to pick that up, but you're going to see it on screen, you know, with these computers. For me, it was 1,540 hertz in Nashville with a cheap shirt mic
dear
taped to
Lord.
my forehead.
Listen, we're gonna stop there. I'm just sorry. We'll take another quick time out, and a few minutes remain with Eric Mitchell and this remarkable story. How could you go away? Stay with us. We'll be right back. We are into the home stretch with Eric Mitchell. There's so much here to delve into, and we are not even scratching the surface. We're going to have you back, Eric, for a full 2 hours. But you were talking about your brain was emitting 1,000 hertz?
1,540, but that was 2014, the last time we recorded in Nashville. As a matter of fact, the guys in Nashville, they weren't too privy on doing the whole project, but the wife was an experiencer, and she pushed for it. She said, you guys have to do this. And, you know, they were really skeptical. I don't blame them. I went into the soundproof room. They were looking at a 70-inch TV, And I was determined to show them that they shouldn't be skeptical. So I blasted, I think it was 741 hertz, pretty loudly, and they picked it up just fine. They were kind of upset at first. They were saying, no, check the diagnostics. That's not him. There's something wrong with the equipment. So they ran diagnostics, and they found out it was me. And, I mean, they just got really excited. So that kind of changed their mind a little bit. But yeah, it was 1,540 hertz that they determined that I was doing, which later on, in my obsession to try to figure out what this is, I thought I had turned over everything I could find to figure things out. And I was talking to a guy in MUFON not too long ago, and he said, well, can you achieve a radio wave? And I said, whoa, what? Radio wave, what do you mean? He goes, I think he said 1,548 hertz, which I was just shy of that in Nashville. And, the implications of that just blew my mind. So my investigator and I, we've got to get together very soon with some different equipment and try some more experimentation.
So, I mean, if you're in this studio and you're producing this sound, I mean, without equipment, is it, if I was standing next to you, would I hear it?
Yeah, you'd have to kind of put your ear to my head, or a stethoscope works really well, or just an amplifier with a shirt mic. Usually when I show people, I have them put it on my head so it doesn't look like I'm trying to pull off any kind of trick or anything. That's usually what people do. They think, well, you're just wiggling the mic or something like that. And that's not the case, because before I had great control, now I can do 5-dimensional frequencies, the background all the way to the foreground with complete control, better control than my voice. So when people say, well, you're just kind of wiggling the mic, I say, well, hold it, put it up to my head and have fun. I understand skeptical thought. I lived my whole life that way.
So this is how you suppose the Greys, I'm guessing, are communicating with people telepathically. So now you're able to do it back, but are you, I mean, the sounds that you're creating, what is that, like the carrier wave? I mean, are you able to encode a message in that? Can you communicate telepathically?
Well, I don't understand. There were 2 messages, and every time I would mess up, it would interrupt me, and I'd repeat it again. So those are the ones that we did in Nashville. They're still being studied. They might be studied for God knows how long. I don't know. But they've only said in English one thing to me, and that was it. And I was leaning up against my apartment. I was alone. It was after dark, and it showed up at the end of the street. And I'm going, what are you? What is going on? I had so many questions. My fear was starting to go away, and I was just overwhelmingly curious. This thing just impacted my life, destroyed everything. I want to know what is going on, and all of a sudden, just right inside my mind, it was, to look is not to see. It is merely to observe with what little we have to offer. And I had no idea what that meant. And it really scared me to, feel that type of communication, because it was emotional as well. It was psychic as well. It was almost, the interconnectivity is unexplainable. But that's the only thing I've ever gotten English at all. It was, sorry about the shaky voice, but, I kind of go back to it in my mind when I'm talking about it.
Right, I can't imagine, yeah.
But, yeah, I've overcome a lot in a long time. But if it weren't for my investigator, I would have put that 380 in my mouth and ended it right there a long time ago. But he's been with me.
You were that close. I mean, it was in your lap. You were thinking about what, you were sitting in your car thinking about ending it right there?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Craving it. I mean, wanting it more than anything in the world, because I couldn't handle it. I just, there was no way. And instead of most investigators, they come, they get your evidence, they take off, and they go study it. And maybe someday they'll call you back and say, congratulations, that was real. But Bear, he really understands because he's been through it himself. So there were many nights where I was just breaking down and not able to handle what was going on. And I have to say the worst part is being a father to children and not being able to protect them from something that you don't even understand. And I think that just destroyed me the most. You know, it's been a long journey in a very short period of time, but I still keep plugging along, you know.
And this is ongoing. This is ongoing, right? And this is still happening. And how about with your children? How are they? I know they're in college, but how are they doing?
They're okay. They really are. I mean, you know, my oldest daughter, she graduated high school at a very young age. She's 23 right now. She's going, you know, for a master's in biology. So, my son, he's doing great. He's looking into engineering and stuff like that. Highly intelligent children, you know, they've grown with it. But I believe because they didn't have so much social conditioning thrown at them, and this happened to them at a younger age, they were more able to accept it than I was. And they were so calm about things where I just couldn't handle it, you know. And I really think that comes with having a forced thought process that gets put on us, you know. Children, if a child sees a unicorn, they'll go, yay. But if you and I saw a unicorn, it's like, geez, get a picture. Nobody's going to believe this. So it's just a different mindset.
And how did you mentioned your investigator. Do you want to give us his name and say hello, or is that kind of I don't want to betray any confidences here? No confidence. His name is Barry Gaunt. He's Kentucky's MUFON state director. He's been studying this for, like I said, over 40 years. 25 with the STAR team. Wonderful soul. I mean, I owe my life to the man. And I did tell him that once. I said, you know, how could I ever repay you for what you've done for me? You know, my children, you've helped us out of the kindness of your heart, you know. And he said, one day when you get back on your feet and off your knees, he said, help people like yourself. He said, now you understand what it's like for them, you know, so be there for them. And I have ever since. And how did he help you get up off your feet? How did he get you from the victim stage to acceptance, if that's a word that you use? Well,
he was just literally there anytime I needed him. You know, I use the analogy, say if you have to have your leg removed, you wake up after surgery, there's a nub there, you think, how am I ever going to live again? You know, and you can become an alcoholic, you can be a poor little me person for as long as you want to, you know, get scapegoats to tell you that drinking's okay and what you've been through is horrible and all that stuff. Or you can be choosing to imagine in your mind 2 years from now, I'm going to be a marathon runner with the prostheses. Both of these two things are really possible. But the fact that he was there, just simply there, that's all, really helped me out quite a bit. And I've never been a fan of being a victim to anything. So, you know, I went after this. I had to. I mean, there's a lot of ufologists that have been doing this for 40 years. But because there's so many falsehoods and everything thrown in their face all the time, it takes them 40 years to get where I'm at now, you know, to understand so many different things. So I had more drive than most people to find out what this is all about. You know, it's not just a hobby for me. It's I've got scars all over my body, and there's no explanation for any of it.
Your story is truly one of the most remarkable experiencer stories I've ever encountered, and I want to thank you for spending a little bit of time. As I say, an invitation to come back and we'll do 2 hours and really drill down deep. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Stay tuned. Rosemary Ellen Guiley is next with Tales of a Haunted Doll, another alien abduction story, and a cursed treasure hunter from Oak Island. You're listening to The Conspiracy Show. My name is Richard Serrett.